Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Bryce Shepard. This is History of Rap, episode 6. Let's go. First off, this episode is brought to you by Rap Fam Unleashed, the only monthly magazine dedicated to the vinyl rap industry. Check out the latest issue as well as our all archive issues at therapfam.com. Therapfam.com. Also, still looking for guests, guys. Well, not looking for guests, but I have a few in the pipeline. But if you would like to be a guest on the show, just shoot me an email at historyofrap. Let me start over. historyofrap@gmail.com. Subject line guest, podcast guest. Yeah, let's do that. Podcast guest. I'm pretty sure that's what I've been doing the last few times. So again, I would love to sit down and talk to pretty much anybody. Doesn't matter who you are, what you do in the industry, owner, installer, been in it for 10 years, been in it for 5 minutes. Doesn't matter. Let's talk. So this episode is with Matt Ferguson. A lot of you may know him online as Matt Ferg. He gets that a lot. A lot of people think his last name is Ferg. He is owner operator at A&M Graphics in Auburn, New York. During the episode, it was kind of funny. We had some technical difficulties at the very beginning of the episode, and I never introduced him, I don't think, until like the very, very end. So, Matt Ferguson, welcome. Thank you for talking. We talk about it kind of turned into a Fedrigoni episode. He is a trainer with Fedrigoni self adhesives, which is relatively new to the the automotive space, as far as I understand. They've been in business for years and years and years, but I'm relatively new to the car wrapping scene, and he is a big advocate for that product. And we go into great lengths and talk about it. We also touch on 75 hard and what it means to, mentally push yourself and do things that you are supposed to do or don't want to do, but need to do anyway, things like that. So pretty good conversation with him. He will be at ISA this week in Las Vegas, at the Fedrigoni booth, which I think is with the Rap Institute like deal over there. So I think that's where you can find Fedrigoni. So if you're interested in like looking at a new product or getting your hands on something a little bit new, at least like seeing how it feels and everything like that, that's really what he's there for. He's not there to push it or sell it on anybody, but he wants to just get everybody to get their hands on it and try to experience something new. Speaking of ISA, if you are going to be there, let me know. Hit me up. I'll be there too. I'll tell you right now, I'm staying at the Luxor. If you want to hang out while I'm there, I'm actually coming in Tuesday, and I'll be there early, and then I'm leaving late Friday evening. So I'll be there for the entire duration. I'll be in and out of the show, things like that. So if you want to get together, I'm always willing to meet new people, talk to people, just grab lunch, dinner, doesn't matter. Hit me up at historyofrap@gmail.com and just put in there subject line, let's do ISA. Simple as that. And if you send me that, I will email back my phone number and just text me, and we can chat that way. So I'm looking forward to it. So again, episode 6, I'm still doing it. There is some downtime between episodes sometimes, but hey, like I have a job, I have a life, I have a family, I have kids. I'm not getting paid for this. I just like doing it. So I'm going to get them out. Again, my goal is still 2 a month, but if that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'm sorry. If anybody wants to help put these together for me, hey, I'm here. Email me, whatever. So again, Matt Ferguson, A&M Graphics of Auburn, New York. Check it out, and I'll hopefully see you at ISA. Let's go. I think I hear. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, buddy.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So strange. Like,
how's the sound?
You sound just fine. How do I sound?
Sound great.
Sound okay? Okay, good. I'm always worried about because I always have some kind of like reverb or something, because like I'm in a kind of a room without anything on the walls, but
Gotcha.
it always seems to sound fine at the end. I get paranoid in the middle of it.
Right, right.
So that's weird. I've never had that happen before. I've done this, obviously a handful of times, but that's the first time I've had there's like an issue with sound really on either side. Even the
Okay.
first time, even I think the first time I did this, it was like just happened to work.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm 40 something years old. I'm still trying to learn technology all over again.
Hey man, that's what it is, right? At least you're
Yeah.
doing the thing.
Yeah, I guess. It's better than nothing. So how's your day go?
Yeah.
You said you were ahead of schedule. I wish I was ahead of schedule. I actually left work a little bit early, but
Gotcha. Yeah, we had we are doing an install at Watertown, which is about an hour and a half away from us. Actually, national rollout for Jody Frigo in Elevate over in Phoenix. Jody's a well-known 3M trainer and just a great guy. So, doing a couple locations for a big national rollout for him.
oh, that's cool.
So I had a couple of guys on site, and then they got there early this morning. Then I hopped up just to give them a hand because it's an hour and a half away. The two of them, with the scope of work that they had, they could have knocked it out, but it would have been a little bit of a long day. So I figured, I would hop up, get a couple walls done for them because I go pretty fast when it comes to that kind of stuff. So got them out of there so that they're home at a decent hour and not, home 6:30, 7 o'clock. They must have been home. They beat me, so they were probably home about 5:30, which is
Oh, that's good.
good. Always help out on that front when I can.
Yeah, especially on a Friday. Like it's got to make people excited. We kind of did the same thing today where we only had like two trucks, and one of the guys was just like, listen, like if you knock it out at 2 or 3, like get out of here. You'll get your full 8 hours. Like get out of here.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I'm the same way. You really, I've been there where I've just burnt myself out time after time after time, and doing that to myself, I never want that for my guys. So
yeah,
I always try to be conscious of that.
yeah. Of course, like I had to stay behind. I had some other stuff going on, and one of the other guys, I had a couple other things, but it's neither here nor there. I was like, all right. So when I got your email, I was like, oh crap. And I had a strange issue with my email on my phone today. So like even when you texted or sent the email about the job down here, every time I went to reply to it, my phone was just like it didn't know what it was doing. I could not reply for whatever to it, and my stuff at work, I don't have like my podcast stuff like on my computers and stuff at work, so like I'm locked in my phone, so I can't even like reply to some of it, even like the big
Gotcha.
sticker stuff. I'm like, what is going on? So you sent that, I was like, all right, I
Yeah.
gotta finish and get home and cook dinner for my girls and get in this seat by 6:30, and here we have 15 minutes of audio issues.
Oh, good. Yeah, and that job, by the way, I got an email today while we were installing that they're pushing the timeline back a little bit. So now they're
Oh,
looking at like first week of April now.
okay.
So that gives us a little breathing room. You and I can kind of link up and take care of the details in the meantime. But
Yeah.
that price was way too low, dude. You got to charge more than that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, see, that's so I don't, I like, I, so here's the deal. Like, I don't want to like repeat myself for a lot of people, but like, I've been in the industry for a long time, but like going out on my own, like I'm new. So any kind
Gotcha.
of, like, especially like doing work for other people in the industry, like it's one thing to price for a retail client or retail customer. Usually that's pretty easy,
Yeah,
but when you're pricing as a contractor, it's a lot more difficult because
100%.
I always like both parties to win as best as possible. And there are sometimes where I'm like, well, I want to charge more because like I know how my quality is and things like that. I may not be the fastest guy, but like my quality and my customer service and everything is there. But at the same time, I
100%.
don't want to be, you know, taking advantage or feel like I'm taking advantage of a potential relationship. So
Sure.
so that's why I'm always like, so I hear, well, you can do, you do certain pricing and it's like, I don't know where I'm at, exactly. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's just because I don't have the repetitions. I don't have that stuff under my belt enough yet to really get a good feel for it. I just don't have the numbers. I don't have the, it's like,
I got you.
so like if I go do this job for you, like that's the one thing I'm going to do. I'll be timing like myself. How long does it take me to get there? How long does it take me to unload my car? How long does it take me to get set up? How long does it take me to do, panel one, panel two, all this kind of stuff. And then I can,
Right.
as I do that, since I'm tracking it, then I have a better idea of where I should be.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just been me kind of going through and getting those reps in the industry for 15 years now, and in the rap game really since like 2017, 18, when I got my certifications, and, that kind of exposes you to the national level of things. Once we went on that 3M list, we start getting these emails. Hey, we've got a job in your area. You're got your info off the 3M list. Here's what we got. So kind of playing that game with some of these really big companies and nationals and things like that. That's the only way I've learned. But when it comes to any of that, feel free to lean on me for that stuff. I've done a ton in that realm. And I'm one of the good guys too. Like I mentioned Jody earlier, you also have like Chris DeFeo, CL Visual. These are the kind of guys where, when I was doing jobs for them, they'd say the same thing, like, get paid what you got to get paid. You know what I mean? And I've very much taken on that mentality where I would rather, kind of form a good relationship instead of, hey, I beat this guy up who's installing, and I made a little bit more money, but now he doesn't really want to install for me. I'd rather have the opposite. If I've got room in the budget, I want to take care of somebody. I've actually got an install with a guy in the New York City area where he's like, well, what do you got to get? Because he's usually like a color change PPF guy, but he's really good across the board. So, I had there's a project we're working on with like a partial wrap with this company based in Manhattan or something like that. And they're willing to drive it to him and everything like that. And I was like, well, here's what I typically pay per square foot on this, but again, I'm open, and he came in uh, pretty good above that. I'm like, all good. It's I'm not cheap. I'm not race to the bottom kind of guy. I'm getting paid on my projects so that I can take care of the people that are taking care of me. So yeah, anytime you have anything like that, feel free to. I think you sent me your number. I'll plug it in. And I'll shoot you a text so you have mine. Feel free to shoot me a text or anything like that, and I can help you however
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah, right on. No, I appreciate that. Yeah. So I actually learned today, I did reach out. So Brent reached out to me. So I've been talking to his mom. I've been talking to Letha about the past couple of weeks about doing a job in Iowa for them, a bunch of Amazon trucks and helping them. Basically, I would be like the third guy to go in there and do like 19 trucks in a
Gotcha.
week or something like that. And the original plan was to go 14 through 21st, but it turns out that they need to get warehouse space, like heated warehouse space, so they could house everything first. And plus, like the weather, I guess, in that area hasn't been like fantastic. So they've been trying to like figure everything out. And I finally told Lisa today, I was like, hey, like I got a couple more things. Cause like after I talked to you the same day, someone else reached out to me, like, hey, can you help me out with some vans? In a place that's like an hour away from me. And I was like, yes. I need to nail a couple things down. And so I reached out to her and
Right.
she was just like, not a problem. So yeah, I think they pushed back to like the 24th would be a start date. So the last week. And I was like, yeah, that's fine, but I have to be home on the 28th. Like I cannot not be home on the 28th. So
Gotcha.
we're still working that out, but like, yeah. So I think you said you were shipping the graphics this week or next week or something like that.
Well, that's what we
Um,
were going to. We were going to, if and I'm the kind of guy too where I would much rather ship the graphics to the installer
okay.
instead of the job site, because I've been on the other end of that where a lot of these nationals want to ship to the job site just in case they change installers or something like that. Um, whereas we always prefer, hey, ship the graphics to us. We'll open them up at the shop. We'll go through them, make sure everything's good. Because a lot of times, especially, I'll tell you what, like last few weeks, we've had two major jobs that, the graphics showed up with damage. And,
Oh yeah.
thankfully it was just in like bleed areas and things like that. But, if it wasn't, and, it was just on site and we wouldn't have noticed, then, you got a lot of wasted time by a lot of people. So uh, we're only going to ship next week because of that impending deadline.
Mhm.
But we'll play. Everything's a little
Okay.
bit more fluid now, so we'll just kind of play it by ear and go from there with the stuff, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I'm happy. Like I said, I'm happy to help. When as soon as you said it, I was just like, shoot, that's like literally my backyard. Like if you ever fly into Cincinnati, you're like, I'm like in flight path of things. So
Gotcha.
it's like, yeah, when people, like I said, people fly into Cincinnati and they land in Northern Kentucky and they go, where the hell, like, where am I?
Yeah, yeah. And,
And
and when we were kind of going back and forth on that, it's like, yeah, of course I know you're an installer. I just didn't know where the hell you are.
yeah, yeah. So, and well, a lot of people, they forget it. Some people just forget, like, just because you're talking to people or you're in, a class with, Duver or, Brent, or you're taking these, doesn't necessarily mean like you've been installing for a long time or whatever. You could be a
Sure,
designer
sure.
or production guy or whatever. So, but yeah, for me, this is all, like I said, this is kind of all new for me. Like I said, I've been installing for a long time, but the going out on my own thing, like, that's new. And I'm still not 100%. I'm still not full time with it. So
Okay.
I have a full time job, um, with I don't want to say the name if this goes on, but like, it I have a full time job with the nation's largest food truck franchise,
Hmm.
and I work on that in that wrap department.
Okay.
And so right now that's still full time, but when I have a chance, I'm doing my own thing. So it's work 8 hours, 7 or 8 hours or 9 hours or whatever it is a day. And then I come home for a couple of hours at night and I work. And then if I get any kind of job or opportunity like this, or like with Brent or with anything else, then I put in a day of PTO or 2 days or whatever it may be to get it
Hmm.
done. And then I do it because I have it. And then anything else is kind of water under the bridge. My goal is to be gone by the end of the year. So like,
Gotcha.
that's kind of my goal. But with me, it's all about time, and timing. So like, I can't rush into things. So I'm taking opportunities as they present themselves to me,
Sure.
um, and doing things that I can, still trying to get to trainings and still trying to get to trade shows and things like that. So like, getting out to ISA in Las Vegas next month, like, that's kind of a goal of mine I'd like to do.
I'll be there.
Taking, doing the classes and the boot camps and things like that. Like, that's still part of it.
Yeah,
So,
and
but
that stuff
it's
is important. That stuff's real important. And like Rap Fam Unleashed, I've done some articles that are kind of
mhm,
based around that stuff, and that's I kind of credit a lot of that to where I'm at today was just early in this industry, kind of forcing myself to get out to those trade shows and seek because I'm in a small city where I'm at in Auburn, New York. We're surrounded by bigger cities like Syracuse and Rochester and Buffalo. We're probably about 25, 30 minutes from Syracuse, and Syracuse is where a lot of our business is. Um, but being in a small city, I knew I always kind of had dreams of grandeur anyways. My mentality always kind of reached out of my hometown. Um, but I forced myself to kind of, yeah, you got to get out, you got to see the industry, you got to, and that started at like the trade shows in Atlantic City when that was a thing, you know what I mean?
mhm,
So even that, to like a 24, 25-year-old kid, that was like, oh wow, so it just kind of opened my eyes. And then there's guys I'd start following, and I'd kind of seek them out at the trade shows and things like that. And because so I think that kind of stuff is really important. Trade shows, immersing yourself in the industry, and the trainings too. The trainings too. I'm a big believer in what I call the rub, right? So it's being in those rooms with killers, or the
yeah,
guys you aspire to be like or look up to, things like that, those conversations with those guys, whether it's in those training rooms or whether it's after the trade shows, over a couple beers or something like that. I take a lot of stock in that kind of thing. So I think
Yeah.
it's huge.
Yeah. That's, there's nothing more I like. Uh, I'm a never stop learning type of guy. And then when I learned, um, like a couple of years ago, and I heard it from John, like, you find someone that you aspire to be like, or kind of in a position, find someone who's in the position that you want to be, and like
Yeah.
you latch on, and you
Yeah.
learn as much as you possibly can from those. And that's kind of where this came from with the podcast and everything. Was I was like, I need to make myself known in the industry, and B, like I need to get to know people, because
Right.
networking is such a huge part of this.
100%.
Because I mean, think about it. Like if I have something that needs done and I can't do it, like who am I going to call to help me, and vice versa.
Right.
Because you still want to put out the best thing for your client as best you can, and if you can't do it, then you want to put them in the hands of someone who you trust. So
100%.
yeah. So, but
Yeah, and
speaking
that's
of,
huge.
yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say on that note, yeah, it's like it's about the connections you make. Like I said, we were an hour and a half doing installs for Jody. I met him through who I consider one of my biggest mentors, Mike Zick. I met Jody through Mike, and just one of those guys that instantly clicked with. I think a lot of us in this industry have very similar personalities. We'd all make good drinking buddies, because we're very similar. We kind of vibrate on the same level, So Jody was an easy one to make friends with because he's such a good guy. But now it's like, because of having that relationship with Jody, anything he has, and he's chasing national accounts, so anything he has in New York State, there's only one guy he's going to call, and that's me. You know what I mean? So making those relationships, you also got to be able to do the damn work too. Um, but the relationship aspect, especially in this industry, is huge. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think you touched on that in your email. Was, the kind of where things have turned in the last 10 to 20 years is, we always used to hold, especially sign shops. Like, you started in a sign shop, I started in a sign shop. That's how a
yeah,
lot of us got our start. We would hold a lot of things close to the vest. You don't really share trade secrets. You don't share your pricing with people. You don't share, you just didn't do that, 20
yeah.
years
If
ago. And
there's
now it's,
two sign shops in one town, they're arch rivals. You know what I mean? That's
yeah.
Yeah, that was really wild, and that's why the industry as it was back then kind of stayed stagnant, whereas now you have what I'd call the rap industry. It's the graphics industry has grown out of that. Is very, very collaborative, to a certain level. And now you've seen this industry, especially in the past 5 years, just explode, absolutely explode. And not only has it just exploded as far as the work that's being done, everything's more, a lot more creative and, diverse, but, you don't have a bunch of, like the sign shop I came up in, it's a miserable guy that was like a terrible alcoholic. That's not the scenario anymore. Like, you have industry juggernauts that are, you know, amazing businessmen, so they're leading amazing teams. So that's really inspiring to see that, an industry like ours, which, I've heard people talk about, does have kind of a low threshold for entry. You can be the guy printing T-shirts in your basement, or trying to do color changes out of your mom's garage or something like that. So with that low threshold of entry, it's definitely inspiring to see the John Duvers of the world, the Chris DeFeos of the world, and that's a much longer list, that are just making a huge business and a serious living out of the same industry. So that's really inspiring to me.
Yeah, and with the, like, it's so easy to get into, where a lot of people, as long as you're willing to do the work, I mean, you could,
Right.
if a good sign shop is always hiring, as they should be, or at least always looking for prospective employees, walking in the door and grabbing an application and say, I will pick up your trash and clean your toilets until you can teach
Yeah.
me what I want to know. Like that's, as long as you have the drive, that's what any good business owner and manager is really looking for, because that's what we all want. We want to make everybody's lives easier, and then help out. So that's something that's really good. I still actually know my boss from 20 something years ago. But like we still keep in touch every now and again. He still owns the same sign shop. It's grown and
Oh wow.
expanded and everything like that, but you know, it's still thriving, which
Mm.
I was just like, man, like that's awesome. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
100%.
he's
That's
and
what you
I
like to see.
yeah, and he's one of the guys that, he's one of the best bosses that I ever had. It was a Signs Now franchise that ended up going to, I think it's called Image 360 now, which is kind of a
Okay.
more encompassing, and they do like Allegra printing and stuff like that. So they kind of do a little bit of
Oh, gotcha.
everything. But and that was down in Lexington, Kentucky, and Central Kentucky, and that was when I was out in college, and I just was this fresh out of college graphic design student that just needed a job. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy. Well, I think my wife
I
got
think
home.
that I think the yeah, I think the mic cut out while they were
Yeah,
because I didn't hear them. So all
yeah, I
good.
know. Um,
So you're originally from
yeah.
Kentucky. You don't have that Kentucky accent.
Well, Northern Kentucky is kind of where
Okay.
home. So Northern, we don't really have it. But yeah, I was born out in Arizona, lived in Texas for a little bit, but I've been in Kentucky since I was probably 3 or 4, lived kind of
Okay.
all over the state, and settled in the northern part of Kentucky when I was about 8. So,
Gotcha.
but went
Yeah,
to
me and my
four.
buddies used to go to Rock on the Range in Columbus, Ohio, and there was always a
Okay.
ton of people from Kentucky there. So that's
Yeah.
where I learned the distinctive Kentucky accent.
Yeah, and it's different too. So it's different in the eastern part of Kentucky than it is in the western part of Kentucky.
Mm,
The eastern part of Kentucky, they kind of speak, and that's where my dad's family is from. They kind of speak with, their vowels are kind of drawn out a little bit. It's not like the
gotcha.
southern
That's
drawl,
what I
but
heard. Yeah,
it's like, so
it's
my name
distinctive.
Brice in the east is actually Bryce.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
totally different. So like all my cousins and my uncles, they say like a that long I, and it's just totally different.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I don't get it. My dad has it. My dad says yella still. He doesn't say yellow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, can't take the country out of them, but you can take them out of the country.
100%.
So yeah, so it's kind of crazy. I want to talk to you. You had mentioned to me about kind of circle back to training and everything. And you had mentioned to me that you're actually doing training with a company called Zagroni. Is that right? Sorry, no,
Fedrigoni.
Zedrigoni. I didn't have it
Fedrigoni
up.
with an F.
Fedrigoni,
Yep.
Fed, yeah. Fedrigoni, and I was trying to do some research on them. I mean, obviously they have their website and stuff like that, but like, tell me a little bit about that. You said is it Italian? Is that what it is? Or
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
okay.
Fedrigoni is an Italian company. They're actually, I think they're the third largest adhesive back manufacturer in the world right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so they kind of made their wave as a high-end paper company. So, a lot of the packaging, I believe, like the bags and things like that you would see, that are embellished with like gold foils, things like that. And, like Louis Vuitton or Gucci or any of those high-end stores, like those are the kind of papers they manufacture, really, really high-end stuff. Um, and they ended up a few years back, they started going on they started buying a lot of companies up. So in the United States, they bought Mohawk Paper, which is, I'm not very educated on the paper end of things, but people that are, when I mentioned that, they're like, oh, wow, because I think Mohawk Paper was like one of the biggest paper companies in the United States, paper manufacturers. They bought Retrama in the United States, which was an adhesive-backed film manufacturer. Who did Unifol? I believe they bought overseas. So they went through a phase where they bought up a lot of companies and kind of brought them under the Fedrigoni brand. So this film, which is their first kind of introduction into the United States, is a digitally printable cast PVC film, C50 Ultimate Slide and Tack, and this stuff is awesome, man. The more people I kind of get this in the hands of, and I'm talking about experienced installers, killers in the industry, the because a lot of people know me, and they know I wouldn't attach my name to something if it wasn't worth its sand. So Fedrigoni, they manufacture all their own stuff. They're not, and it's crazy since I started on this journey, and you learn kind of some of the ins and outs, kind of some of the back end stuff in the manufacturer world, in the distributor world, in the supplier world, which is very interesting to kind of get that 60,000-foot view or whatever that saying is. But they manufacture all of their own stuff. They have their own casting lines. Which you would be surprised how important that is. So one of the things I always tell people is like, it's not just some relabeled Chinese junk, because unfortunately our industry has been plagued with that, right?
Yeah.
It's just, there's only so many casting lines throughout the world. So if you've ever seen those things, like those diagrams of the food brands and how there's like 3 companies that own all the thousands of food brands that we think are unique and everything like that. It's not quite that intense, but it's very similar when it comes to casting. Casting lines are very huge, expensive, multi-million dollar operations. So Fedrigoni has its own casting lines, which again is very important because I won't mention the name on here. We could talk about it off camera, but you wouldn't believe, one of the biggest manufacturers, wrap manufacturers that we use, that the industry uses day to day, like isn't even producing any of its own overlaminates anymore. And once I tell you, you'll say, well, are you kidding me? So I think that's really important, that they're manufacturing all their own stuff. It's not white labeled, relabeled Chinese stuff or something like that. So I thought that was really important as I kind of did a deep dive into the company. The people I've met from the company, the products they offer, kind of the culture, everything like that. Plus on top of having a solid product that I think is one of the best, if not the best, wrap film, printable wrap film in the industry right now, all kind of led me to, sign me up. I was actually doing Dave Saylor, who's my area rep here in the Northeast for Mamaki. I run all Mamaki equipment. He does like they call it, I think, like the Northeast Sign Expo or Graphic Expo or something like that in the Boston area every year. And he's like, hey, we have this distributor. We're going to be setting up equipment. A bunch of manufacturers are going to be there, things like that. He's like, they've never done, like wrap demos or anything like that. Would you like to come do wrap demos? Mamaki will flip the bill. Let me know what you got to get. I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that because, that's something I've been interested in for a long time, is kind of product education, training, things like that. Again, with kind of, with Mike Zick being my mentor, I've always wanted to kind of follow in his footsteps. He's an amazing guy, an amazing trainer, just a legend in the industry. So always knew I would kind of want to follow in those footsteps. And even in other careers before I got into this industry, training was a passion of mine, whether it was in sales, I was in sales management, and it was always the training aspect of things that I kind of gravitated towards. So while I was doing that graphic expo for Mamaki, I met Larry D'Alessio, who is works with Daft Products, and they're a supplier. So you've got manufacturers, the suppliers bring stock in from manufacturers. Suppliers sell to distributors like Glance or Grimco or those kind of guys. Those are all distributors. And then, guys like you and me buy from the distributors. So DAF is a supplier that sells to distributors. So he was there presenting a bunch of different products that they, sell to distributors and things like that. And he's like, hey, can you try this? We're taking a chance with this new Italian rap film. We've done our homework, and this company is really legit. They were founded in 1888, so they're older than 3M, older than Avery. And now they're really pushing forward with like this whole line of digitally printable products. Fedrigoni, although stuff is not available in the United States yet, it's coming. So Fedrigoni manufactures a whole line of polymeric, monomeric, cast and calendared printable films. They make PPF. They have two different kinds of clear PPF, color change films, all the way down to like plotted plotter film, you know what I mean? Solid color plotter films and stuff like that. So they have a whole catalog. So Larry's like, we're this is supposed to be, a really great product, not just, in addition to somebody trying to steal a little bit of the pie in the United States market, but this is supposed to be a really good film. And of course, I've heard this a bunch of times, right? There's so many, going to trade shows and things like that. There's always, hey, we want you to try this film out and let us know what you think of it, And what happens is they end up shipping me samples. The samples sit in the corner of my office for 6 months until, we do like a spring cleaning or something like that, and they go in the dumpster. And that's what ended up happening with this stuff, So it kind of sat there for a while, and Larry followed up with me, and he's like, hey, did you try that film out? I was like, no, we've been kind of busy, blah, 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 blah. I was like, I'll definitely try it out. And he's like, well, we've got some things coming up where we want to do trade shows and, ISA and SEMA or printing. I think it was Printing United was the first show we did. He's like, and we're going to need somebody, from the rap industry to kind of represent this product. It's like, okay, now I'm a little more interested, but again, the film had to be legit. I'm not going to go out there and, try to represent a product that's just crap and a product that I'm not going to use personally. So I had my guys print it, and kind of put it through the ringer and take all the notes, hey, how was it to work with? How was it to print? Did you have to change a bunch of settings on the printer to get it to print really nice? Nope. Super easy, which was nice coming from like IJ280. When IJ280 came out, is 3M's next level film. It's very heat sensitive. So we had to change a ton of settings on our printers, like our pre-print and post plat and heat settings, just to be able to print that stuff, so then we got to turn the heat way down, and then it's, sticking on the take-up reel to itself and stuff. I was like, well, this is a pain in the ass. So it didn't do that. Production was really easy, printed beautiful, just with generic profiles. Fedrigoni is rolled out working with color. I don't want to say it wrong. There's a couple. Let me look it up quick.
I was gonna say like I say stuff wrong all the time. Have you listened to this thing?
Yeah, but there's a couple there. I want to say color casters, but I don't think there's a couple profilers out there. Color base. Okay, that's what it was. See, I was wrong. So we printed it with just our like a generic Mamaki profile, whereas now Fedrigoni's invested and has worked with color base and now has profiles for, you know,
Oh,
all the
that's good.
printers in the US and things like that. So they're like, nope, printed super easy with generic profiles, you know, no issues with laminating, nothing like that. So I was like, okay. You know, and some films will on a take up reel, because we dive in really deep when it comes to every aspect of this industry, and to a point where it's wild to me um, that 99% of shops don't. Um, you know, so when it comes to the production end, like every little part of the production that affects the film, we dive really deep into. You know, everybody that works for me, I've only got 5-6 guys that work for me, and they all come from 90% of them come from this industry. You know, they have backgrounds in the wrap industry, the sign industry, display industry, things like that. And they've never, um, working for other companies in this industry, they've never had such knowledge as they do on every part of what is in this industry that they do now with A&M graphics, because it's knowledge is power, you know what I mean? So you know, knowing everything about the solvents and in your inks and the kind of adhesive that's on the back of your film and things like that, it just makes life easier, you know. So a lot of people just kind of brush the surface on prep, on production, on installation. You know, it's amazing how many shops don't post heat. You know, it's and this is all coming from you know, kind of touring the country and doing shop visits for Fedrigoni and their main distributor, which is Layered Plastics, and kind of seeing this stuff. You know what I mean? So, you know, this has kind of led me to, man, how do we get everybody on the same page? Because there's only one right way to do things when it comes to this industry. You know, there's only one right way to print, you know, and outgas properly. I don't care what the manufacturers say, you know, printer manufacturers, I battle this all the time, and I kind of have to tiptoe a line where, um, you know, if you take like solvent or eco solvent, they're like, oh, 24 hours you can outgas. And it's like, no, you know, there's levels to that, you know. And if you read any of the film manufacturers' actual bulletins or, you know, kind of the fine print that you're supposed to, is somebody producing these kind of graphics, it's like, no, you know, it's 24 hours for eco solvent is okay if it's very light ink coverage and you're installing on a flat panel, you know, like a sign or the side of a van that's not going in a recess or over a curve or going to be stretched. Then that might be okay. You know, then they recommend at least 48 hours if you get into any kind of heavy ink coverage, dark colors, and starting to go around curves. You know, they recommend 48 to 72 hours of outgassing, and that's loosened up on a roll with fans. You know, because solvents are heavier than the air itself, so the fans have to be above the rolls, not below the rolls. So there's a lot in like every aspect of production. You know, latex, they say, oh, you can laminate right off the printer. That's not true either. You know what I mean? I think there's like, and I forget exactly what the combination. It's not outgassing, um, but it's a different term. You know, but you should wait at least 4 hours before you laminate latex, and that might even be longer. I don't run latex ink. I don't run latex printers, so I don't know. But you know, I've run into that where, um, you know, I've gone and talked to a shop about Fedrigoni, and you know, they're printing with latex and they're doing straight from the printer straight to the laminator. And then you're having, and doesn't just happen with Fedrigoni. From what I found out, it happens with Avery and everybody else. You know, when they do that, especially heavy coverage ink and going in channels or over, you know, anywhere the film has to be stretched, the laminate can come away from the ink,
It'll do.
you
Yeah, I've
know.
seen that before.
Yeah, so you know, a lot of And when this kind of stuff happens, people are kind of like, well, I don't know. Well, this is what you do. You got to know, or else you're just doomed. Those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. So
Yeah.
you got to know this stuff. Knowledge is power. The more you know, the more efficient you can make your process and things like that. So it's kind of been a wild ride. So I tested the Fedrigoni film out. My production guys were like, "This is awesome." We had a wrap in the shop that was coming in for a local chain of dealerships, car dealerships, that we have a really good relationship and a customer for a long time. So it was like a new Subaru sedan, whatever that model is. That was going to be like their courtesy vehicle or something, so they wanted to wrap it. I'm like, well, I'm going to use this as a guinea pig for this film. And I use a mix of, contract in-house and contract installers. Not a deep talent pool geographically where I am. And a lot of the good installers, to be honest, end up going off on their own and becoming contract installers. So I've got to use a good mix of that. And one of my awesome contract installers, I had him in that day for that wrap. I let him know. I was like, "Hey, this is the film we're using. You have to handle this a little bit different. It's not like 180 where you heat the crap out of it and stretch the crap out of it. Try to use no heat. When you're going over a curve, feel the film. Watch what the film does without trying to manipulate it with heat, and you're going to be surprised." I was like, and then when you do get to a point where you do need heat, it's a little bit, and heat gun, not torch. I know everybody's going to yell at me. Oh, pros use torches. Yeah, I know. I use a torch for a long time, but again, the more you deep dive and you see how inconsistent the heat is and how focused it is from a torch and so hot, so it's so easy to not make a mistake, but to overdo it with a torch. I've gone back to, I still use a torch a lot. Trust me. There's just some places I don't want to run an extension cord in a heat gun, but if I have my choice, I'm going to use a heat gun. I'm going to use a Weldy heat gun. Those things are freaking amazing. I spent the money on one of those like a year ago, and I'm like, man, this thing's worth every penny.
Yeah, I'll never use another heat gun unless they make
No.
something better. Like unless something better comes out, which I don't know. Like I tried to get a
Yeah.
lot of my guys to go over to Weldy's, and I convinced about half of them. Some of them are still
Yeah.
using Steinels, and a couple of them are using torches still. And I'm just like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Everyone has their preference. But
It
after I
is
put
what
a
it
few
is.
holes in
I
my
could,
shirt,
yeah.
with a Stein, rolling over on a Steinel or something that doesn't have
Right. You
on it,
get
I'm like,
the heat gun kiss on your forearm
oh
or
God, yep.
something like that. It's so I was like, and then so I was like, use a heat gun, don't use a torch. And when you need to apply heat to this stuff, just a little bit, you're not sitting there heating it, making it molten. Just a little kiss of heat. Well, and this thing just kind of flattens right out. So it just kind of gave them, so the Fedrigoni film is a different installation, like a lot of different films are now. Avery install is different than 3M does, and which installs different from Hexus, which is a whole different world. So kind of it's not a whole education. It's just, hey, do this, and this different from what you would normally do with like the 3M technique. So he did, and one day install, I gave him the 5 o'clock, and he came in around 3, and he's like, "You want to come check it out?" I'm like, "You're done?" He's like, "Yeah, dude. What is this film?" So, that's really been the consensus. It's legit. It's not just relabeled crap. It's a product like a lot of people haven't felt. It has a lot of similar features to some Arlon films. It has some Avery feels to it here or there. It's kind of got to what I like to describe. It has all the pros with not with none of the cons of,
Okay.
some of the other films out there. So it's an amazing film. It's, it's tried and true. It's been in the European market for years now. So it's not just something that's new and just came out and, oh, well, it's new. We don't have any data behind it. It isn't. So it's just new in the United States. Um,
And you're assisting with putting together the training program, is that right?
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now. What we have done since the middle of last year is kind of like product knowledge, right? So it's been product demos, making awareness. Um, with the shop visits, it's like letting experienced installers get their hands on this stuff
Mhm.
and see it for themselves. So again, just trying to make brand awareness, let people know that there's another option out here. Um, and now we've done some intro training. So it's like an intro to fleet, or excuse me, intro to commercial graphics is what we're calling it. And it's been amazing. This film, because it's such a relaxed install, we found that experienced installers can install this film a lot faster. So
Mhm.
comparison to IJ180, it's like a 20% faster install. Avery kind of closes that gap a little bit. Might be the same time frame for an install. Maybe the Fedrigoni is a little bit quicker, especially if you're used to the technique. But it just feels like an effortless, like a stress-free install. You know what I mean? So experienced installers are installing faster. And then on the other end of that spectrum, if you're not experienced or you're just starting out, it's a good film to learn with because it doesn't have some of those drawbacks like IJ180 where you stick to itself, you're done unless you know how to get that stuff off of itself. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that film has come a long way since some of the issues they had, manufacturing issues and stuff like that. But it's a very, very aggressive film. It's not the film I'd recommend for people to learn on. It could be frustrating if somebody's, and that's what we need to do is advocate for more people getting into this industry for this industry to grow. Um, Especially with how fast the industry itself continues to grow, we're going to have to keep backfilling people interested in being installers and interested in being production people and people just interested in this industry all around. So, and obviously it has to do. So we've been doing these intro trainings. So the one we just did in Boston, which was great. I mean, they just continue to sell out in minutes. So that just kind of shows you how eager people are to get into our industry, whether they're coming from, the traditional sign shop and they don't want to keep leaving money on the table with their clients who need vehicle wraps or partial wraps, or just something more than cut lettering, things like that. Or the big other end of it is people coming from the the automotive customizing world. They're doing tint now. They're doing car audio. That's another thing I've seen a lot of. So there's a lot of crossovers into our industry where people are really interested, but they need something to kind of help them get over that wall in their mind of the entry to the industry. So these events have been great for that. Um, in Boston, we had with the Fedrigoni film, I had there was a girl, I still have to put a post together. Things just seem to keep moving at such a breakneck speed these days. It's hard to keep up with all the social media posts that I want to do. But there was a girl that was in the training class who had never touched vinyl before, and by the end of the day, I had her cold wrapping the mirror of a Tesla. You know what I mean? Cold stretching, the mirror, and she did it twice in a row. I had to help her through it a couple times, and that's what this film is great at. Cold stretching, wrapping without the assistance of heat, you can do so much. So without having to go fetch that heat gun, without having to get that torch, and um, you know, that saves you time right there. It takes a little bit of heat, not a ton of heat to get it molten. That saves you time right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a great film. They're boasting a 12-year warranty, which is more than anybody else in the industry. You know, Avery's at like 8, 9, 3M's at 10. So, you know, they're really coming out and putting their money where their mouth is, and price point is better than the rest of the guys too. You know, I think this is one of the more expensive films in the European market. You know, on my recommendation, they're coming into this market for now. We'll see what happens with tariffs and everything like that. But, you know, if that's the case, everybody's going to go up. It's not just going to be them. And it's not coming from China. So it won't be as much as, you know, you'll see when those other films, they do go up that percentage. That'll be a real key indicator of what's coming from China.
Yeah, it will. What's the life expectancy after it's printed and installed? Is it still like a 3 to 5, or are you looking at something more?
It's more. So again, they're boasting that 12-year warranty, you know, which is the same as 3M's 10-year warranty or Avery's 8-year,
right.
depending
Unprinted
on the
in a
film.
box.
Yeah, then you hit all these variables and that goes down. But, you know, kind of without kind of cutting hairs there, what the point is behind that is no matter what it is, vertical, horizontal, printed, unprint, it's still better than everybody else's.
I got you.
So the best warranty in the industry right now.
And are they providing a matte and a like different laminates, gloss, matte,
Yes,
luster, whatever, you know, that middle.
Yep. And their matte is a true dead matte.
Yeah.
That was one of my biggest beefs with, I won't call it a beef, but I just didn't use it. 3M. You know, we do a lot of interior stuff, a lot of interior wall murals. We call them wall murals, not wall wraps.
Right.
Call them wall murals and you can charge more. So we do a lot of interior stuff, and I absolutely cringe when I see any kind of sheen coming off of interior stuff, whether it's a wall wrap, lettering, I mean, anything. If I see a sheen, if there's like any kind of sheen on that, it's just, I don't know, for some reason, it just makes me cringe. So I like a real dead matte, no sheen. And Arlon 3220 matte is something we use for a long time because that has a great dead matte. There's no sheen coming off of that. So I was like, okay, let's see how Fedrigoni's matte is going to be. And it's right there with Arlon's. It's a beautiful dead matte. We're actually rewrapping one of our shop vehicles right now. This old Honda Element, this 2008 Honda Element I've had. It was one of our first shop vehicles, and I just can't kill the thing. The thing owes me nothing. You know, it's got over 200,000 miles on it. It just keeps ticking, you know. It's probably the 7th wrap we've had on this thing. The paint still looks brand new because it's always just had a wrap on it. So we're rewrapping this with the Fedrigoni film. And what we do with all of our vehicles is we do a matte finish, and then we do spot reflective graphics with a gloss laminate on those. So it's matte wrap with spot gloss reflective graphics on top of it, which really make for, you know, it's your shop truck. Your shop truck, you should go overboard with your shop vans. You know, when you're showcasing what you do, you need to go overboard with it. You know what I mean? It's a sales tool, you know? So we're wrapping it right now, and it is so, it is such a dead matte. I love it. The color on it's great. So I have a 2022 Ford Transit, full-size Ford Transit. That's our main shop vehicle. And that was wrapped with a competitor's film when that first came out with their Ultra Matte. And, you know, I parked these two things next to each other, and, you know, the color, the white point on the Fedrigoni film is a ton better. There's no tint to the laminate, whereas on the Transit, we can see a greenish tint because of the laminate. Everybody, it's 3M films on the Transit. Everybody knows 3M's laminates usually can leave a green tint to your color. So, now it makes me want to strip the transit and rewrap that. But, we'll do that when we have time. So
So go ahead.
I was just going to say there's just a ton of things that have really impressed me about the film. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people. It's like at SEMA, for example, we had a Fedrigoni day at the Wrap Glove Wraps Live booth. And, with that, I reached out to a lot of people, industry people that I'm connected with. And, I'm not a salesperson for the film. You know what I mean? I'm kind of just like a brand ambassador. And then at SEMA, that's when Fedrigoni named me their first kind of certified trainer or whatever,
Gotcha.
which was awesome. That was really cool. So all I did, at SEMA, I got a hold of a lot of industry people that I knew were going to be there and say, hey, we're doing a Wraps Live takeover all day. I'd appreciate it if you stop by, just try the film out, get your hands on it. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want your honest opinion, and there's people that are 3M shops, there's people that are Avery shops, there's people that are Orifol shops. It's like I'm not trying to sit here and get you to convert or anything like that. I just want you to get your hands on it and give me your honest opinion. And all like amazing opinions. You know what I mean? People were impressed by this film. Everybody's reaction was the same. Once they got into it and they started manipulating it, and you have that knee-jerk reaction at a certain point to go for the heat gun or something. Nope, do it without the heat gun. Okay. So just kind of close. Oh, wow. I mean, that was the reaction, person after person after person. Again, some of these shops aren't going to switch, but to get feedback from people whose opinion that I really appreciate, and juggernauts, amazing installers in the industry, and people that run amazing shops and things like that, to get that kind of feedback, that kind of gave me the motivation, or at least fortified what I already thought. You know what I mean? It's like, this is a legit film, and I'm gonna run with it because I've got some awesome peers that kind of backed me up and let me know I wasn't crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. It's really good to have. I mean, heck, that's one reason why I go to different trainings, because I want to get my hands on the films and
Yeah,
just know that if I need to make a switch or I need to use a certain film, then at least I'm somewhat familiar with it and I'm not going in blind,
100%. And with the
which is
way,
huge.
since COVID, we saw a lot of crazy things happen where couldn't get this film, couldn't get that film. You know what I mean? With tariffs and things like that. Last time it happened, it's like, oh, well, things just weren't coming in, or you've got, a strike at this port. I mean, there's just so much volatility, excuse me, in the world right now that you can't be married to one
Mm-hmm.
thing. And
Right.
Fedrigoni and Daft, the guys that are importing this, they're not out there thinking that they're gonna flip this 3M shop or that one. They just want to be another option. You know what I mean? They're realistic. They're not trying to go conquer the world in one day. They know people use what they use. And right now we want to be another option. And if you really like that option, then, we're here for you, which is good. Some of the shops we visited have switched over, because it's cheaper, and, a lot of smaller shops are scraping at any margin they can get together right now. For the past few years, times have been tough for the small business people. So, inflation is out of control. Hopefully that starts to get fixed here, or at least dialed in or offset. And I felt it in my own business, being a small business owner. It's like, man, everything just keeps getting more and more expensive. I got to pay my people more and more. It's like, if you're not adjusting your own pricing on the fly with that, you're going to go out of business. So I think a lot of smaller shops, especially, have seen the cost savings. You know, right now, a lot of distributors have premiered this film at $9.99 for a kit, you know, which is amazing. Yeah, again, that's probably going to change here a little bit with the tariffs, not much. But you know, when you compare that to some people are paying 12, 13, $1,400 for, you know, other labels, then that's a huge savings for a small shop. You get into a bigger shop, that savings is compounding, you know. So that kind of cost savings up front with the ease of production, and then it's a faster install, you know, it gets a lot of people thinking, you know.
So
So
what's it, because you said it's not necessarily available here in the States, like what's the timeline on that, or do you
it
know?
is the C50 Ultimate Slide and Tack, which is the
Okay.
film I've been talking about,
Right.
is available.
Oh, okay,
It
through
is,
Laird, is that?
well, through Laird and also some other smaller
Okay.
distributors. You know, I could name a bunch in the Northeast, but it doesn't matter. Laird was the early adopter,
Okay.
and a lot of the shop visits that I have done around the country have been with Laird. Um, you know, which I didn't do business with before I built this reputation, but that's a great company. You know, I'm all about relationships. If it's one of my vendors, I need to have a relationship there. I can't go and just order from big box wrap store online and not have a personal relationship with like a rep or something like that. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Any way I do business, I'm very relationship based. Whether it's people I spend money with or vice versa. So, you know, when I kind of started meeting some of these people from Laird, especially you know, their VP of strategy, who kind of brought me in and hooked me up with all the different locations. I was like, these are just great people. Like, these are people I can break bread with and have a beer with and enjoy their company. You know what I mean? They're like-minded people. It's not just you know, some corporate suit or something
Right.
like that, you know, I'm just kind of waiting to get, because that's not the kind of situation I'm going to put myself in, right? You
Yeah.
know, I'm not going to sell my soul for anybody, you know. So it's all been very, very organic, very, very easy, relationship wise, you know what I mean? So, and I don't think I could have it any other way. You know, there's aspirations that I had about being a trainer, maybe for some other brands, and you know, that brand, the more I talk to some people that have been in that role, not really something I want to do anymore. You know what I mean? So I think this worked out perfect for me. And you know, we were just on a call with Italy a couple days ago, and I'm excited to for what the future holds. You know, not just with the film and the momentum that we've built in less than a year, way less than a year. Um, Excited to see what the future brings, and I'll be at every trade show this year, most likely. ISA is already booked for sure. Printing United should be a definite, and we'll see about SEMA again this year. But SEMA was really successful for us last year.
Good.
So
Yeah.
if
SEMA is one
anybody's
that I
going
definitely,
at,
yeah, I definitely want to get to SEMA. That's one that I've been telling myself I need to get out to. And just for whatever reason, I mean, when you work in, essentially you work in manufacturing, there's just not a lot of reason to get to things like that other than personal
yeah, that was
reasons.
this past SEMA was the first SEMA I've been to, because you know I've always you know, kind of been the same way, where it's listen, I'm not we do commercial stuff here. We're not into, you know, the customization a lot. I do it. I've done it. I've got a freaking Lamborghini that I've wrapped that was on the cover of Rap Fam Unleashed. You know what I mean? So I'll do it in very specific scenarios. That's my buddy's car. You know what I mean? He's actually a business partner in another venture of mine. So, you know, I couldn't tell the guy no, nor would I want to, you know. So I
Right.
could do it, but So that's why, I never really ventured out to SEMA, because Vegas is never a cheap trip
No.
from the East Coast, especially those shows. Everything, all the rooms sell out quick. The flight prices skyrocket really quick. Any trip to Vegas is expensive. So I could never justify it to myself to take myself away from the shop, not making money, to go spend money on something that wouldn't have um, not a guaranteed return, but even any
Yeah.
sight of a return. So last year was my first experience at SEMA, and it was amazing, dude. But I was getting paid to be there, not spending money, so
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
was able to justify it.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely awesome. So I think I had mentioned to you a couple of times, like we just kind of turned into the Fedrigoni show, which is totally fine
uh,
because I'm all about learning about new products and things like that. It's definitely something that I'm gonna, I'll look into. But one thing that I definitely wanted to talk to you about was kind of like a mind over matter mentality. I know this is something that you adopted um, within the last couple of years, and probably kind of around the time that maybe I did the same thing. And a couple years ago, John put out like a 75 hard, mission for a lot of people. Put it online. There was a group of us that went and did it. And for those people who don't know what 75 hard is, if you have a problem getting motivated or trying to do something that you don't want to do, like 75 hard is kind of the way to overcome those excuses, I guess is the way to put it.
yeah.
Yeah.
The way I like to explain it to people is, and I've had to correct a lot of people where they think it's like a workout or a fitness challenge. It's not.
No.
It's a mental toughness challenge. Exactly the way Andy Frisella says it. It's a mental toughness challenge, and although the tasks that make up 75 hard on their own are very simple, and maybe not that daunting, you know packing all those tasks into one day on top of the busy life you already lead
Mhm.
is very difficult.
Yeah.
um, you have to be very regimented, and I'll tell you what, I tell Duver this all the time. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't. I probably would have failed out of that 75 hard. This is the first time I did it, actually. That just
Oh,
finished. I
is it?
finished. Yeah, I
Okay.
finished February 13th. I used to do dry January every year,
Mhm.
um, just as a break after the holidays from all the excess, the eating, the drinking is just a lot, right? It's always been very, very good for me to kind of take that hard reset, especially in the beginning of the year, when as a business owner, where listen, I need to game plan and really lock things down on what I'm going to do for this year and what I'm going to do different to make this year better than the year before, right? So dry January was always something that was really good for me. Um, and every time I came out of dry January, you know, it would last longer and longer. Sometimes it would last to the first week of February. It would last to the middle of February, third week of February, and then it would do that. Then I would take, like after, we're in the Northeast where we're in upstate New York. It gets cold and gray here and snowy for a long time. So when summer rolls around, June, July, August, we go hard. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
I live in the Finger Lakes region, so it's a series of lakes. So hashtag lake life. We go hard, and there's concerts, there's parties, there's outdoor stuff. I mean, just nonstop. I look at my calendar for a weekend, any given weekend during the summer, and I have to decide what I'm going to make it to, what I'm not going to make it to, because we just go hard. That's our time where the sun's shining and it's not miserable and cold. But then with that comes a little bit of reflection after that. It's like, man, it's been a lot of drinking this summer. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of crap concert food or this, that, the other. So then I was doing like January and September. I always just found value in taking those months off from alcohol, refocusing on my physical fitness, and just being mentally sharp. So last year was a little bit tough year for me personally. The way I like to kind of summarize it without going too deep is I kind of experienced a handful of things that in one year that most people don't experience over the course of their life. So it was a tough year for me mentally. I found myself, um, drinking more than I wanted to, just really lacking the motivation, and I just wasn't the me that I knew anymore. Um, and it was coming up. It was November, and I was like, man, I really gotta make a change here. I got to get back to me, and I don't know how to do that. Um, and obviously being part of Rap IQ and knowing John Duver for some time now and hearing him talk about 75 hard, I'm like, I think that's, the more I dove into it, I was like, I think that's it. I think this challenge, I need to reset myself mentally and get back to, and people I've had this conversation with will get a laugh out of this because they've heard me say it, but I got to get back to that motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And other people I've had this conversation with is sometimes you got to remind yourself you're a motherfucker. And I've had to remind people too that they're motherfuckers. Um, and that's I'm sure there's better ways to put it, but that's the way that I put it that drives it home with a lot of people. So I had to get back to that motherfucker, and I thought 75 hard was going to be it. So I was still tiptoeing around it, and I put a post on Facebook, and I'm like, "Hey, kind of thinking about doing 75 hard starting December 1st. Let me know if anybody would be interested." Tiptoeing hard, man. 5 minutes later, my fucking phone rings and it's Duver. I'm like, oh shit.
Now, see, now you have to. You opened up a can of
Oh
worms.
yeah. Oh yeah. So I answer the phone. I'm like, what's up, John? It's like, December 1st, 75 hard, let's go. I'm like, oh, now I have no choice, because I'm the kind of guy, sometimes I need that push like that,
Mhm.
100%. But when I'm there and when I got that phone call from John, there's no way I'm letting that dude down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no way. There's no way I'm going to not do it and not bust my ass to succeed.
Mhm.
So right then and there, John kind of made the decision for me. I'm like, oh man, well now I got to do it. And then I get one Facebook notification that says you have been invited to join the group Rap IQ 75 hard, whatever. So I accept, and I get another notification. You have been tagged in a post by John Duver and Rap IQ 75 hard, and it says, uh, we're starting 75 hard again December 1st. Why December 1st? Because Matt Ferg starting December 1st, and he's as solid as they come. So let's go. I'm like, now I have absolutely no way
Yeah.
of getting out of this. This is happening whether I like it or not. So, but I was like, let's go. You know, so I dove in to really comb through the details because you got to know the details. You can't just have a brief knowledge of it. You have to know the details of
Yeah. You
what
cannot
flies.
go in blind. You can't. You
No,
got to have a plan. Yeah, you absolutely have to plan. If you have no idea what you're doing, you're just going to say tomorrow I'm going to start. Like you'll fail
yeah,
immediately.
100%. And then it was conversations with John where he was like, "Listen," and he said that exact thing to me. He's like, "You might think you can do this stuff, but you have to have a plan. You have to be more regimented than you've ever been to try to work this into what I'm sure is already a busy life, busy schedule." And one of the best pieces of advice he gave me on it was he's like, dude, when I'm doing 75 hard, I try to have that checklist done by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't put shit off. Don't bring stuff home with you to do in the evening because you will fail. You will fall asleep trying to get those 10 pages read at the end of the night. You will fall asleep trying to, before you get that last sip of water done. And a stupid little thing like that is going to make you fail. And I came close a couple times. There were some times where, life just happened, and where I was on an install all day and I couldn't get to, how I was normally doing things, because what I was doing, I started waking up earlier. I'd get up at 5 a.m. Every day and do my outdoor workout, which was just a walk for 45 minutes. I would do that first thing in the morning. 0 degrees, minus 10 degrees, 2 feet of snow on the ground up here. I got the hardest thing I was going to do every day done first thing. And that's a huge moral victory for you. It was a huge moral victory for me every day to start my day off. And then I did that hard thing outdoors, came home, took a shower, and I'm up and I'm rolling for the day. I'm ready to conquer the world for the day, instead of waking up at whatever time to roll to the shop, still kind of fuzzy eyed at whatever time in the morning. No, now I'm up and I'm ready to go.
Yep.
I'm at the shit. I'm starting my day earlier. I'm getting more things done. So that was amazing. And there's a lot of things that came out of 75 hard that I had no idea would come out of it, that I didn't expect. That 45-minute walk in the morning when it's still dark out and nobody's out yet, really. You might have a stray car here or there for some of those early risers. Still dark out. I got headphones in with a podcast on or something like that. And I'm just walking, right? So your body's pretty much on cruise control. And that ended up being, without even knowing it, that turned into a time of reflection, self-reflection, without even trying. And that's when I realized, like, I've never taken time for reflection ever. You know what I mean? Like, we keep ourselves really busy and go, go, go. Then when we do have some downtime or some free time, we fill that with something. We fill it with Netflix or scrolling social media or just something else to keep ourselves busy. So to kind of have that time of unintentional, self-reflection, where I'm able to think and just kind of digest things. It's like, hey, maybe I could have handled this situation with my daughter Hadley a little bit better last night, and been this kind of dad instead of that kind of dad. To be able to go, hey, what about that? I've got this big meeting coming up with a potential client, or I've got a hard talk I have to have with an employee. We kind of, as human beings, we kind of get in this habit of filling our time so we don't have to deal with that hard stuff or the thoughts around that hard stuff. It's really easy to do and it's natural. So it was huge to be able to have that time and kind of get through that stuff and process that stuff and digest that stuff, whether it's things that were upcoming or things that had already passed. Those things would just kind of naturally come into your brain, into my brain, and I would have to process them. And that was really good. Like, but it showed me, it's like, man, we don't do this. It takes something like this for us to kind of force ourselves to process some of this stuff or face some of this stuff. So there was so many good benefits of 75 hard, that the health benefits, the fitness stuff was just a byproduct. That's going to happen anyways. It's in the best shape of my life after 75 hard. I was looking, I was like, wow, that's amazing. But the mental clarity, because you really got to turn yourself into a motherfucker to get through 75 hard. And, there's phases of it. It's, the first part really sucks. Like, how am I going to do this? I thought I pulled something in the back of my knee. I'm like, like week one, I'm like, oh man, is this going to derail me a few days in? Like, I'm going to look like such a pussy. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
your brain is almost looking for a way out, like anything,
Yeah.
like almost anything. Like, how am I going to get out of this? Because the first couple weeks are awful.
They're
I
brutal.
I did it change for you? I know for me it did. Did it change the way you interacted with people, or the way that you kind of? So I fell into a trap and didn't notice what I was doing until my wife called me out on it. I had basically got into my own bubble because I was just like, no, no, no. What I'm doing with the 75 hard, I was so focused on me, I forgot about everybody else. I forgot about
Mhm.
her. I forgot about my two girls. I forgot about, I kept up on all my responsibilities, but that personal interaction between myself and other people, that the thing that matters, like, I forgot about it. She had to, like, we had a come to Jesus meeting one night,
Mm.
and I didn't even know I was doing it. And so, like, after that, I was like, oh, okay. And then, like, the rest of the time was fine because now I was conscious of it. Did you find yourself falling into any kind of trap like that?
I didn't, but I think my situation is a little bit different. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I have to interact with a lot of people on a daily basis. My team here at A&M Graphics, we are very collaborative. I am. We're all interacting with each other multiple times a day. I'm on multiple Zooms with whether it's clients or it's peers, colleagues, Fedrigoni, just a lot. You know what I mean? So I didn't find that. One thing I did find in my interactions with people, um, I one big thing was with my daughter. When I had to get her up in the morning, that was a struggle sometimes. And I'm like, man, why is it so tough to get her going? She's a bear to wake up. That is what it is. She never wants to get up in the morning, but it was a real struggle. When I was doing 75 hard and I was up early, I had my walk done. I had my shower done. I was able to hop on and have a little bit of me time before I even had to wake her up to get her started. Um, it was my state of mind being different in those mornings that led to her state of mind being different. So our mornings all of a sudden became much better, much lighter,
Hmm.
much easier, which was amazing. As a dad, um, I think it's a really, really hard time to be raising kids, no matter what age they're at. And all we can really do is try our damnedest and hope we're doing our best. So to kind of have that part of things become lighter and better because I never want to send her to school, in a bad mood or on a sour note or anything like that. You know what I mean? So for those mornings to become lighter and more fun and just all those things was was amazing. And I think that was part of is 75 hard at least opened my eyes to your mornings can be better if your mindset is better.
Hmm.
Another thing was I think I just wore it on my face a little bit different. People could tell I was different. Like that I was, and I still hate saying this. Everybody says, vibe is so overused that I hate using it, but I was definitely vibrating on a different level than
Yeah.
where I was weeks before that. You know what I mean? And I think it's so cringy to kind of say vibe, but there's no other way to describe it.
Hmm.
I was vibrating on a different level, and I still am. And people, you wear that. You know what I mean? It's not just how you're operating, but it's your facial expressions. It's how you
Yeah.
interact with people. So my interactions with people became much better, I would say, because everything was just lighter. The other thing too is just from when I would get into a conversation, because it was amazing. I had so many people reach out to me saying, "Hey, what are you doing? Tell me about it. I'm interested. Maybe I need this." And I had a handful of guys locally that ended up starting 75 hard, and it really did a lot for them too. It really, some were struggling with alcohol abuse, or some, just struggling to, take care of their physical fitness. And man, whether it's locally, there's also some guys around the country that jumped into it because we were doing it. So that was inspiring on its own. The other big thing, as far as interactions with other people, when I would sit there and I'd be out to dinner or something like that, and I'd be talking to somebody, and they were interested in it, or just interested in trying to be better in general, and kind of seeing the journey I was going through. Obviously, and I know all of us that have done 75 hard have had this conversation with people, and we had to get over these same things ourselves. It's like, yeah, I'd love to do 75 hard, but oh, I can't do, I'm too busy to do this, or just you just automatically start making excuses as to why you can't do the things. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. I don't have time for this, and I think it just became like the way I was, the way the, expression on my face ended up being, because they'd started with, oh, they're asking me about this program, but then they start in with the excuses on why they can't do the program.
Right.
And I don't know if my face just went to something
Yeah.
like that, but they'd get through like excuse number one, and they'd like stop and realize that they're just making bullshit excuses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they say, "Oh, well, I'm too busy," or the kids, but then they forget. Then they remember who they're talking to. Like, I run multiple businesses, and I have children, and I travel around the fucking country for my industry, and doing what I do.
Mhm.
And I went through almost a dozen different cities while doing 75 hard. I went through my birthday doing 75 hard. I went through the holidays, Christmas, New Year's Eve, all those holidays. I started December 1st. So I went through a lot of holidays and a lot of travel while I was doing 75 hard. So they kind of start in with that first excuse, and then they remember who they're talking to, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm just making excuses." But they have that self-realization, which is awesome. So I think it's and the person I think I came out of after 75 hard. I was actually just talking to, we've got like a group text going with myself, John, and Conrad from Exotic Vehicle Wraps, who was doing,
Mhm.
we're all doing 75 hard at the same time.
Oh wow.
Um, and after being off of 75 hard for a couple weeks, I'm like, fuck this. I want to be back on it. Like, I don't, but how good I felt, and, just mentally sharp. You know what I mean? I was pretty sharp before, but, I could always see the direction of conversations going, or how something was going to play out. Whereas now, when I was doing that, I felt like I could see a football field away of, not
Yeah.
just the next step, but the next four steps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's addicting on its own, just being so mentally sharp and so in tuned. It makes it really hard to go back to anything that's less than that. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a couple years since I did it, and I feel like, man, maybe I should do it again. But at the same time, like, maybe I shouldn't. And I
yeah,
talk
that's the
myself out
struggle,
of it.
right? Yeah,
It's one of
I'm,
it
I'm
because
sitting here just talking shit right now, because
yeah,
I'm not doing it again. I haven't started phase one yet. I wanted to start phase
yeah,
one, and I haven't
yeah.
done that yet. But I think it has to be, I think you have to find that balance of, the big thing, my big bitch about 75 hard is the no days off.
Hmm.
That's hard, man.
It
That's
is so hard.
that's what builds the mental toughness aspect of it. So I completely understand it, but that's what makes a lot of people fail. makes a lot of people crack, because it doesn't matter how much of a motherfucker you are. There are those days where you just don't want to. I went through in 75 hard, you go through phases. You go through the first couple weeks, 2-3 weeks suck. You don't know how you're going to do this, how you're going to maintain it. Then it gets a little bit easier. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I got this. And you kind of go through that phase. And then you go through a phase where, oh, I've got this on cruise control. Then you sleep on it. You know what I mean? You kind of, oh, I got this. It's no big deal, blah, blah, blah. Then it's like, 10 o'clock at night, and you start putting things off because you think you got it. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh shit, I didn't take it. There was one time, and did you have the app when you did 75 hard?
Yeah.
So there was a couple of those scary times where like I took my project picture and then I got interrupted or something like that. So like, and I just took it on my camera. I didn't take it like through the app. So I thought I had everything done for the day. Then you wake up the next morning and open the app, and then there's like Andy there. Did you fail?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, that happened to me a few times. And I was like, no, I finished everything. And it was just because I didn't check the box or whatever after I got done reading, or it was 11 o'clock at night and I had to go on a walk or something like that. And I just didn't check the box when I got home.
Yeah, 100%. So I went through that a couple times, and that's freaking frightening. You know what I mean? So it's like, you're going to have those days. And then, like I said, you get to that phase where you kind of sleep on it. Like, oh, I took the picture, but you don't upload it. And again, you don't fail because you did take the picture. You just need to put it in the app. But then you get that fucking thing in the morning that Andy's like, did you fail? And then you're like, no, I did it. Then it's like, are you sure you did it? So it's wild, man. It was a really amazing experiment in really seeing what I had and who I am, and what I'm able to do. So it's very empowering when you finish it, and even when you don't. Conrad had some things happen where he ended up getting like pneumonia or something like that, almost halfway through, I want to say. Oh, wow. And yeah, so he was on his back for a number of days, and because of that had to start over, which was, we really freaking felt for him. He is an amazing guy. I don't know if you know him, but he is.
I talked to him actually a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So, he is one of the best guys I ever met in my life, just super compassionate and just a very, very real dude. I've had some amazing conversations with him, and I just appreciate him as a human being. So for him, I felt like I was on this journey with him. For that to happen to him, I was sad by that. You know what I mean? But instead of, kind of whining about it, he's like, well, the process made him harder, made him stronger, so he was like, it is what it is. I'm not going to sit here and whine about it. Just going to start over. I'm going to get it done. You know what I mean? So, the 75 hard, it hardens you. It does make you mentally stronger. And like I said, the physical stuff is just a byproduct of that.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah. For anyone who wants to, like I said, stop making excuses, look it up. I mean, I think it's, I don't know, 75hard.com or something like that. Just Google it. You'll find it. It's all
or Andy's
Andy Frisella
podcast. I forget, every freaking podcast he says, go back to podcast 208. I think that's whatever. Can't believe I just remembered that. Yeah, I think it's 208 or something like that, because he says it every time. You get the fucking thing for free. I don't charge no money for it.
But yeah,
I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah. No, so a gallon of water, no drinking, 2 exercises a day, 2 45-minute exercises a day, one of which outside, 10 pages of a self-help book every day.
Yeah, nonfiction. So self-help, business-related reading.
And then you have to be on some kind of a diet. So
Right.
like something, right? I mean, whatever works for you. It doesn't have to be like lose
Yeah,
weight,
which
gain
which
weight,
was
whatever.
nice,
Just
and
be
that
healthy.
was yeah, that was another huge tip that John gave me. He's like, dude, this is gonna be tough. Make it doable.
Hmm.
The things you can control, plan it out. Your diet, it doesn't have to be something crazy like rice and chicken every day. He's like, because you're gonna get sick of rice and chicken after
Yeah.
about 2 weeks, and you're gonna wanna fail at that point. So it's like, don't make these things drastic, make them doable. So I did it again. Big props to John. If it wasn't for his kind of input on the stuff beforehand, I never would have made it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. He's definitely gotten me to do some things like, or at least, kind of motivated me to get some stuff done. He and I, it's funny because I don't know, he's a few months younger than me or a year younger than me. And I look up to him in ways that I'd never thought I'd look up to somebody just because, he's a killer. He's got that
Yeah,
mentality.
he's a
So,
motherfucker, and
yeah.
he there's no bullshit to him. He's going to tell you how it is. He
Mhm.
doesn't sugarcoat, and you know, eh, most people in life run away from that these days. But I think you need somebody like that in your life. What? While I was on the 75 hard journey, I bumped into a guy. There was just kind of an acquaintance, and you know, he and I got to talking. You could tell he was in a tough spot. Really heavy into the alcohol and things like that. And he's like, this is a guy who's got a crazy background in like Silicon Valley and things like that, and did really well for himself, and is by no means an old guy, but it just kind of lost himself. He's like, man, I'd love to come work for you, doing sales or something like that. And I had to put it bluntly to him. I was like, dude, I would never hire you. It's like, what do you mean? Why not? I was like, because you're a fucking alcoholic. Like I know you. I see you out. We have friends in common. I was like, you'd fuck it up in a matter of days. And he kind of looked at me like he had this shocked look on his face because I was giving him a hard truth. That was some time ago. And I just ran into him again, like within the past week, and he came up to me and sitting at my favorite local spot, just having dinner at the bar, um, and he says, "You mind if I sit next to you and have dinner?" I'm like, "No, absolutely, please do. It's good to see you again." And he sits down and he shakes my hand. He's like, "Dude, I just want to let you know, like what you said to me, all those weeks ago or however long ago it was, you know, you didn't have to say that, and it was a little harsh." He's like, but you kind of opened my eyes to something. Yeah, he was pulling the wool over his own eyes, right? It's so easy to get stuck in a rut and, you know, either distract ourselves away or drink issues away. And alcohol is a huge problem in our country, right? It's every social event is based around alcohol. It's so normal. I think now more than ever, and especially post COVID, alcohol is a huge problem. And people don't realize because it's not hard drugs, it's not this, it's not that. It's socially acceptable, right? It's part of a lot of social gatherings and everything we collectively do as humans for the most part. So he's like, it wasn't immediately after that, but it wasn't long after that I kind of looked at myself in the mirror, and your words resonated, and I kind of had like a what the fuck moment, and he's telling me about the steps he's taken, and which includes therapy, which I'm a big proponent of. If you're in need of it, um, men's mental health, those are huge things I love talking about all the time. But he took the steps he needed to kind of turn his life around. And he's like, you know, and it was kind of getting to like almost an embarrassing point, because he just kept thanking me. Like he thanked me like 6, 7, 8 times. Like, I just want to thank you for saying that to me that one night. I'm like, you don't have to thank me, man. I was like, you know, I've been in tough spots myself, and I don't think enough people, especially men, I don't think enough men talk about this stuff when it needs to be talked about. You know, we're so used to putting our heads down and, you know, getting after it and not discussing this stuff. And sometimes it's fucking hard, man. And again, I just don't think it's discussed enough. So it was really cool to see, you know, my words impact somebody in a positive way. And, you know, just him thanking me. And, you know, so I told him, I was like, well, yeah, I appreciate it. I was like, dude, you're the one that did the work. All I did was talk some shit. You know what I mean? All I did was called it how I saw it. Kind of gave you a blunt truth. You're the one that's done the work, you know, so just keep doing the work. The work never ends, you know? So I think whether you're kind of in the throes of addiction like he was, or, you know, you're just trying to be better like we do with 75 Hard, and, you know, of that mentality of mentorship and, you know, reading and everything, the physical fitness, trying to be better in our industry or professionally, you know, the work never stops. Right. You know, one of my favorite quotes, it's been like in my Facebook for, I can't even tell you how long, is like, success is not owned, it's rented, and the rent's due every day. So a lot of times when I was, you know, especially waking up to do that walk for 75 Hard, it's just like rent's due, let's go, rent's due, you know, every day. So it's ongoing, just like everything, you know, you can't stop, you know, it's okay to slow down, it's okay to rest. But that's got to be temporary, you know. Yeah. Rent's due every day, and we got to keep going every day.
Yeah, forward progress every day, 1% better. They call it, what do they call that? Kaizen. 1% better.
Kaizen, yep. Yeah, better every day. Yeah,
so that's right. Yeah, a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff that I've learned over the last couple of years here. So, all right, dude, we've been going for a while, so let's wrap this up.
Sure.
No, yeah, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you sitting down with me. And God, I mean, based on, like I said, I mean, you're the first person that actually like wrote answers into the questions that I emailed out, which is fantastic. And like, I would love to come back and talk to you about like a lot of that stuff that
yeah, 100%.
You put in there later, because you have a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, your history, you know, who your mentors are and have been, and, you know, where you're going and where you've been and things like that. And again, I think that's all fascinating, and I think people should hear it, because like, you know, if it helps one other person, or one other person can relate,
100%,
you know, then it's worth it. And so far that's what I've been finding a lot, which is really, really good. So dude, I appreciate it. So we'll wrap up, and then we can talk a little bit more, but dude, again,
yeah. And I just want to say before we do, like, I appreciate what you're doing. When I saw you first announce it, you were jumping in and going to start a podcast. Like, I don't think I was super excited about it, you know, especially with the kind of the premise that you were bringing to it. You know, when John and Blake started their podcast, you know, all the podcasts, when Brent Tatum was doing his podcast, that was awesome. You know, I know all those guys got, you know, busy and don't really do them anymore. Chris Almer just recently, not a podcast, but he just brought back the Rappers Roundtable.
Yeah. Touch on that real quick, awesome. Because that because I know something went out when he was like, "Oh, if you got your email," like, I never got an email, and I know I was signed up for
them. yeah. Just shoot Chris a message, and he'll get you back on there, because I think there's been 2. I was on the one this past Tuesday. You know, which you look at the people attending that's Murderers Row. You know what I mean? Right. It's some of the best guys in the industry. And those are just those things, you know, that's at 8:00. I think it ended up going to like 930, 940 or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
but the things you pick up off of something like that. And Chris Ulmer, talk about another amazing person. I enjoy him and his wife Vanessa. They're such great people, and just another guy who is just putting it out there, just does so much for the industry. And Rappers Roundtable, him bringing that back by popular demand
Yeah.
is I can't thank him enough for that, because just the things you pick up on that call, it might not be the topic of the call, it might not be the guest he has. He's going to do a guest every other week, I believe. Um, but just being on that call, it goes back to the rub. You know what I mean? You have a question that's just plaguing you get it out there, and you got Murderers Row to, some of the best shop owners, some of the best installers on that call that are going to give you their input on it. It's invaluable, man. You can't pay for stuff like that sometimes. And this is free. Chris Ulmer's,
Yeah.
doing it on the kindness of his heart. So love
Yeah.
that guy.
Yeah. I'll have to shoot an email out. Before we jump off, I'll put an intro at the beginning of this, but like to everyone who doesn't know, I've been talking to Matt Ferguson, A&M Graphics. You're the M in A&M Graphics, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but tell people you kind of touched on it earlier, where you are, where they can find you online, and
Sure.
what projects outside of Fedrigoni that you got going on, since we spent half the time talking about that.
Yeah. 100%. So, yep. Matt Ferguson, A&M Graphics. We're located in Auburn, New York, which is upstate New York, Syracuse area, Finger Lakes region. Um, you can find me. You can find A&M Graphics on Facebook. We're on all the platforms, right? So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn is a big one for us as well. I'm Matt Ferg on Facebook, Matt Ferg 315 on Instagram, Matthew Ferguson on LinkedIn. Everybody thinks my last name is Ferg, by the way,
Sure.
just because of social media and stuff like that. No, there is
Yeah.
actually more there. It's Matthew Ferguson, for those that don't know. A&M Graphics is A&M Graphics on Facebook. If you follow me, it'd be hard not to see that come across. AM Graphics 315 on Instagram, A&M Graphics Inc. on LinkedIn. So we're all over the place. I need to get back to, we used to post really steady with like project posts and stuff like that. We're going to be getting back to that. In the meantime, I've kind of had enough content with everything going on, just sharing and customer projects that they're sharing, and I'm share their posts and things like that we haven't had to do a ton to kind of stay relevant. But yeah, that's what we do. We specialize in, we do vehicle wraps, being a 3M certified shop, also 3M architectural endorsed. But we really found a niche in what we call premium graphic environments. So we've a lot of healthcare systems, higher education, universities, higher end office buildings, things like that. We do multimedia walls, we like to call them, wall murals with layered acrylic logos, plaques, ADA stuff. So interior is really what we've really taken on the most, being that we have such a long winter and it's so cold and so messy outside a lot. Still do a ton of vehicle wraps. Again, but our focus has been on the interior stuff. And now that I do have such a great crew here that holds down the fort, that's what's allowed me to kind of go out and do the trade shows and work with Fedrigoni and things like that. Some of the most exciting projects we're working on right now, I can't really talk about them because we're kind of linked up with some a couple of big marketing agencies that we've really built great relationships with. So one of those is the project you're going to be installing in Cincinnati. So let's just keep the name of that one off of this one. And
Yes, sir.
then we just met with them over a really, really exciting project. Trying to see how I can kind of phrase this without avoiding my NDA. But somebody in the shipping realm is going to be doing a lot of rollouts nationwide. This company's going to be doing a lot of rollouts nationwide. So we'll be fabricating. All the signage is going to be a part of that. This is all interior stuff. And there'd be some wall wraps and some a big interior rollouts nationwide over this year and next year for a very, very big name when it comes to that space. So we just talked about that, and I'm super excited about that. And I will be sourcing a lot of installers around the country to help me out with that. So
Awesome.
coming soon to your inbox. Guys, keep your eyes peeled over the next few months.
Sweet. And then I guess one of your next stops there is ISA out in Las Vegas, right? So you gonna be
Yeah,
at a booth, or are you
actually,
just going?
yeah, ISA is going to be awesome. So DAF Products is going to have their own booth at ISA, which will be right next to, it's actually, they got a really good spot. I think they're right next to 3M. They're right next to the Wrap Experience. Justin Pate's the Wrap Experience over there. Fedrigoni is also going to be a sponsor of the Wrap Experience. So there is also, I think this is new for Justin in the Rap Institute this year. They're also going to have another area right next to the Rap Experience that's the Rap Demo Depot. So that is going to be where a lot of manufacturer demonstrations are going to go on. So I just found out about that. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to talk about or not talk about. But it's on the map for ISA now. You can see that. That's public knowledge. So I will be involved with Fedrigoni at the Wrap Experience and the Demo Depot. So that's really exciting. Obviously Justin is a guy I look up to as well. Longtime subscriber to the Rap Institute, and refer a lot of people to that because that's just such a huge database of knowledge and videos and things like that. I mean, there's nothing like that. So, Justin obviously has been huge for our industry. I attended, I forget what it was called, the business boot camp that Justin and John Doover did a couple of years ago at ISA. Man, if any of you guys have the opportunity to attend that, that's some high level stuff right there. I almost thought about doing it. I got a hold of John. I was like, hey, is it going to be the same exact thing this year? Because I want to do it again. He's like, yeah, no, it's going to be the same thing. Don't do it again. So I was like, all right. Because there's a little bit of a, it's a little bit of a cost associated with that.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm going to be at ISA.
I will say if you're Avery CWI, get to one of their advanced classes with Justin and John, because they don't just talk about zero stretch and stuff like that. They go into business as well. So
Right.
it's kind of like a little mini business boot camp as well as training.
Nice.
And you're surrounded by killers. I mean, which is fantastic. So if you are an Avery CWI and have the opportunity to go, definitely sign up for one of those this year. I went last October or whenever they had it at the end of the year last year. It was awesome. Like so awesome that I would go back.
Yeah.
In another year or so, just, if they change it up or whatever, like I'd go back.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. Like
I don't have the Avery CWI yet. That's actually, we were talking about that today. I think it's in June or July that they're doing the Avery full digital training at Exotic Vehicle Wraps with Conrad Co. and John is the trainer. So I'm like,
okay.
How could I not go to that? Yeah. You know what I mean? So to do that, and I'm going to be looking at the certification, get to see the WI. That's definitely a goal this year. I also wanted to do, some other stuff. I was looking at some PDAA stuff. I was looking at Avery's architectural films, like the window films with Harold. There's a lot of things. Again, it's never stop. You gotta keep learning. You gotta keep pushing yourself and testing yourself for sure.
Absolutely. Perfect. Great. All right. We'll wrap it up. Stay on with me for a little bit, but for now,
Absolutely.
like I said, again, I appreciate you coming on, and I have
Yeah, thanks
this
for
one.
having me, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. Like I
We'll have to
said,
do it again.
no, we will. Yeah, this so far, this is by time, this is the longest one so far, but I don't do too much
Oh,
editing.
nice.
Just throw them out, and but
I'm a
people
talker.
are, yeah, people enjoy them. So, and I said this from
Good.
the very beginning, if even if no one enjoys it, I'm going to keep doing it because I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
So if for no other
Awesome.
reason than to make myself happy, that well, I'll just keep doing it for as long as I can.
Awesome.
So
Well, keep
all
it
right,
up,
man.
brother. We love it.
All right, thanks. And we'll talk to you soon. That's it.
Sounds good.
See ya.